Ken Phillips is Executive Director of Self-Employed Australia. Now, Self-Employed Australia is a national organisation and not-for-profit. Membership is open to all self-employed people and companies who use the self-employed. In Victoria, anyone who is responsible for unsafe work practices can be prosecuted. That's under the law. Public servants and ministers are not exempt. Ken, your organisation has sought prosecution of the Victorian Government for criminal failures surrounding the hotel quarantine program, which resulted in over 765 deaths. First of all, welcome, and what do you think?
Well, thank you very much, and a pleasure to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to have the chat. We've taken the action with this under a provision in the WorkSafe laws that enables any person, any citizen, to lodge a request to the prosecutor, the WorkSafe Authority in Victoria, to undertake prosecutions if they believe that that needs to be done. So we've very simply done what's available under the law, and we have written to WorkSafe asking them to initiate prosecutions against the government and named persons in the government. And so we're now waiting for their response. They have recognised where we've sent them the letter. Under law, they have 3 months in which to either initiate the prosecutions or they must write to us explaining why they are not undertaking the prosecutions. And if they don't undertake the prosecutions, then we can request the public prosecutor, the DPP, to undertake the prosecutions.
Can you tell me why you've taken this action?
Well, it's fairly straightforward. There's a thing called the rule of law. There's a thing called a civilised society. This is not China. This is supposed to not be a totalitarian state. And in theory, we have a situation in which everyone is subject to the laws, and we must not have a situation in which there is the application of laws to everyone in the community in one way and a non-application of those laws to government. In other words, it's not acceptable that there is one rule for the rulers and another rule for the ruled. It's really as simple as that.
Can you explain more about Victoria's laws on workplace safety and how they've been used?
Well, I actually consider the laws in Victoria to be one of the best work safety laws in the country. I'll remove from that the amendments that were made last year to create the manslaughter laws. I don't agree with those, the industrial manslaughter laws. But the laws that were created under the Bracks Labor government in 2004, I consider them to be very, very good laws. And they do a very simple thing. They apply under work safety principles called the Robins principles. I won't go into the history of that, but the Robins principles hold that everyone is responsible for what they reasonably and practically control. And that's the basis of the laws in Victoria. It's frankly the basis of the laws across the board, or supposed to be. So in Victoria, the Act, if you step through there's about 2 pages in the Act, and it says, look, if you're the manager of a business, this is how it applies to you. If you're the board, this is how it applies to you. If you're an employee or an independent contractor or a supplier of goods and services and so on and so forth. So everyone is held responsible for what they reasonably and practically control. So, for example, if there's a requirement to put a safety guard on a machine, and the board of a company says, look, we don't have the money to do it, we're not going to do it, and then there's a injury as a result, the members of the board are potentially, certainly can be prosecuted and potentially liable. So they should be. But if the board says, look, yes, put the guard on, and then the person who installs the guard doesn't install it correctly, well, the law applies to that person. They did not apply. They didn't install it correctly. So that's the way it should be, and that's the design of it.
So have you received a response to your letter from WorkCover?
We've received an acknowledgement that they've received it.
Oh, excellent.
Right. So at law, they are required to respond to us within 3 months. So that's the 29th of December.
So what can they take? What's the action that the authority can then take? I mean, if they went the full hog, what can they do?
Well, what they have to do is exercise their responsibilities under the Act. And their responsibilities are to investigate and, if necessary, if they believe that there's enough evidence, to prosecute. And it's as simple as that. And then the courts then decide on the evidence presented as to whether or not anyone or someone is guilty.
If no action, though, is taken, what's the implications then of this?
Well, one would presume that they would write back to us and say these are the reasons that we're not prosecuting. And then we would then, based on that, more than likely ask the DPP, public prosecutor, to prosecute. The DPP would then have this is my understanding, this is the provisions in the Act, it's quite clear. DPP would then decide whether or not it was necessary to prosecute. And so those responsible authorities who have very, very extensive powers of investigation, powers that way exceed that of the Coate inquiry, and I understand powers even arguably stronger than that of the police. So it's then a matter of being based on the evidence, and I'm not in a position to comment on that evidence because we don't have the full evidence. We've got enough from the Coate inquiry. But then the course of the law would then need to play its way out. Now, this I would expect will play out well into 2021. These things never are quick. And so we can see this having a very, very long lead time to it. So that this is going to be a very long story.
What's your legal advice on this? Is it positive or toss of a coin?
Well, I'm not going to speculate, and good lawyers don't speculate. What we've done is said, well, look, there's a provision in the Act that enables us to request the prosecutions. We're initiating that provision, which anyone can do. We've initiated it on good, solid legal advice, and we think that there is sufficient evidence and grounds to warrant us sending that letter. So that's what we've done.
State governments manage the virus, and that's from a world opinion, in fact, in a very heavy-handed way, at odds, just completely at odds with expected principles of infection control and isolation of the sick with minimal disruption to others. Do you expect more class actions and damages sought by those prevented from, say, earning a living, or maybe the business has just been obliterated?
Well, I'm not involved in any class action activity. To my understanding and what I'm aware of, there are, I think, 2, maybe 3 class actions that have been launched in Victoria. So we'll see how those also play out. Again, the history of class actions is that these things can take, 3,
forever,
5, 7 years, and then how much the actual people at the end of the day get out of the whole thing, who knows?
Do you think this signifies serious failures of governance and advice from health and policy experts?
Well, look, my observation is really about the administration issues here. I can't comment, or don't like anyone. We sort of look at what the health officials are saying and go, well, I don't know one way or the other, and it seems to change. But what we do know, let's look at the facts. People are saying, well, look, this is a highly unusual pandemic. Well, no, it's not. we have defence forces, and we spend a lot of money on defence forces to build up huge resources, military forces, that we hope we never use, because we don't want to have war with anyone, but we have to be prepared for war. It's an unfortunate reality of life. Now, what's the difference with the health sector? I just don't understand. Pandemics and so forth, and infection through the community is well known. Measles, all ordinary stuff that we've now hopefully got rid of. The flu, communicable diseases are a normal part of human existence, unfortunately. And there are systems in place, have been in place in every health department, every health area, to require people to report on communicable diseases. So HIV, AIDS, sexually transmitted diseases, the list goes on. So the systems have been in place, and this is just normal stuff. This is like the health departments should be like our defence forces, with considerable resources ready to respond against a virus war, a virus attack, hoping that you never have to use them. And it's, I think, demonstrable in the other states that they've been pretty effective. But what we've got in Victoria is clear evidence. My goodness, the virus attacked, and our defences in Victoria were just appalling.
Your organisation, Self-Employed Australia, Ken, tell us about that. And if somebody would like to tick the box and become a member, or just to get hold of you, what's the process?
Well, we've got a website and a Facebook page and so forth. The website's where we've got most of the information. We're entirely volunteer. We are small. I have no question about that. We're not paid. We raise enough money to keep our website going and to conduct campaigns. And this is not the only sort of campaign that we do. We've been around for 20 years. We campaign very heavily to get the unfair contract laws for small businesses in place. We're very pleased with that. They're being beefed up. We're very, very much behind the implementation of the new pay on time laws. So small business people getting paid on time is probably the biggest issue that all small business...
Or getting paid, or just getting paid.
Getting paid on time is the top priority. So those laws are coming in. And we're campaigning for major reform of the Australian Taxation Office. So I've got to say, we have a habit of taking on big causes. Right?
You do. It does. So at the moment, you're not on the Christmas list for the Victorian Government, the Taxation Department, the federal government. Is there anybody else that I've left out?
I'll tell you, I'll be very careful opening any Christmas cards I get, because what might be in them.
No, or the ticking sound.
We operate entirely on the funds that come to us from membership, and we're very appreciative of the support that we get from people. And we've got a volunteer team, and then we get people who come in and say, "Hey, I want to get involved." And we've got people developing websites for us, and fantastic lawyers who come along and say, "Look, I believe in the cause. I'll help." So it's this network, but we're just a small organisation. No pretense about anything other than that.
Well, the Chinese say, may you live in interesting times. Ken Phillips, you're certainly doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.